Mugwena Maluleke is the General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union, Sadtu. He joins us now to talk about some of these issues. Mr. Maluleke, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us once again. Now, you as Sadtu have said that you think it's unacceptable that in the 21st century there are still schools in the country with no proper classrooms. But maybe let's just first start with the issue of the impact of floods in KwaZulu-Natal and the fact that there are learners who have still not been placed in schools, even though these floods occurred months ago.
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers at home. It is regrettable that we find ourselves in this particular situation where the learners have not been accommodated, even if we know that the floods happened 6 months to 7 months ago. And our understanding would have been that the department have been working together with the government to prepare and repair those particular classrooms. And if not able to repair the classroom, they would have really procured mobile classrooms for those particular communities, because even if they were to transport all these particular learners, we know very well that come February or March, we are going to be hearing the department that says we don't have the money to transport the learners. For now, it's just about appearing, obviously, on the screens saying that this is what we are doing. But once the screens have been removed from the site, those particular learners are going to be vulnerable, are going to be suffering, because they will be told there's no money to pay service providers.
The issue of infrastructure is also something that's been highlighted in several provinces. We mentioned KwaZulu-Natal, where there have been floods. There were floods in the Eastern Cape as well. But overcrowding also being a reason why some schools are adding extra classrooms. But I'm just thinking, we mentioned the issue of Ngobo in the Eastern Cape, how you had learners who couldn't go to school because of a school structure that was incomplete. How does that situation even arrive when the school calendar is known well in advance, and therefore, you know, completion of such important resources should have been of primary concern for the school?
I fully agree with you that these are the things that the department should be focusing on, making sure that the project management of such, projects is something that is of a priority to all of them, from the national to the provinces. However, if you will go to the website of the department as well as the provinces, you are going to find that there is a ticking clock. The ticking clock is about the release of the matric results. It's not about the ticking clock that says so many days left for the completion of the school, so many days for us to be able to offer our learners a new classroom, so many days left for us to be able to offer our classroom, our learners recreational facilities, laboratories and libraries. So it is not a priority for our officials, unfortunately, because if it was a priority, it will be forming part of these metric result, a release, which is always a clock. Every day you are going to be seeing a 28 days left, 7 days left, and therefore it will be in the Twitters, it will be everywhere, and so forth. And I think that is, we do not understand why the department is missing these particular priorities, because infrastructure is very critical for any form of learning, because the environment under which you learn is very critical for you to be able to learn. It is an input that is required for any learner to be able to learn. If you learn in an environment that does not respect your dignity as a human being, you are likely to have ill discipline in the school. You are likely to have people taking advantage to sell, drugs to the school, because they don't see that particular infrastructure as really something that is for human beings, basically, in some of these particular provinces. So it is just not something that we can be even talking about it really, because 6 months, 7 months, we're supposed to have appointed. I have said last week, if the idea is to create this particular stampede, that today we're talking about it, clearly behind it is for preparation for corruption. It's just like when you are queuing in post office. 3 days you are looking for your 350 as a grant. The idea is that you must commit corruption. You must go to the security person and say, please, I will give you my 50 rand, you give me my 300 rand. And so you create corruption, you create depression, desperation, so that you are then able to commit corruption by going to appoint your own company to go and fix the school.
Mr. Maluleke, Sadtu held National General Council late last year. I'm not sure it was November, December. Some of the deliberations were on overcrowding and infrastructure challenges. What was the outcome of that National General Council?
The outcome of our National General Council in October last year was obviously linked to the celebration of the World Teachers' Day, where we're talking about a new deal for our teachers, a new deal for our learners, and a new deal for our communities in terms of how infrastructure has got to be attended to, so that we are then able to reduce the overcrowding. So the outcome was very clear that, one, we are going to make sure that in terms of the law, in terms of the constitution of our country, we're going to hold the department accountable in terms of the norms and standards, because it compels the department to ensuring that the infrastructure is attended to. Secondly, it is that the overcrowding should not be allowed, because it impacts on the ability of our teachers to teach, it impacts on our learners to learn in a way that they can be able to benefit from the inputs from the teachers, because at the end of the day is that there is no individual attention, and therefore we are not honoring what the constitution of our country is obligating us to honor as an education system. So it is the outcome was that is what we're going to do. We're going to monitor, we're going to go to the ELRC and making sure that we want to receive reports about what is being done on a monthly basis by the Department of Education. In the provincial chambers, there will also be those particular reports that we demand that they must report to us in terms of a project to then say this is what we're doing to address these particular issues, because once and for all we want to deal with the issues of Section 10 of the Constitution for our country that deals with issues of dignity and safety and security for our children.
And speaking of norms and standards, I see that in some classrooms there are up to 80 pupils per class. What should be the acceptable minimum standard for the number of pupils in a class?
I'm sorry about what has just happened. It was a censor. So the minimum classroom for primary school is 40 learners per class. Okay, and the minimum in terms of the standard, it is 35 at the junior secondary, and there's a higher secondary or higher education, what we call FET band, which is high school level. So that is what is signed in terms of a collective agreement that we have signed since 1994, and that is also an international norm, basically, in terms of what the ILO and UNESCO have agreed, that you can lower it from 40 in a primary school to where it is acceptable amongst the parties, and you can lower from 35 learners in the classroom to any other level which is will be acceptable to the parties as they negotiate. But you cannot go above 40 in primary, and you cannot go above 35 in secondary school. That is the norm, and that is what we have signed for.
Thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing those insights. Sadtu's General Secretary, Mr. Mugwena Maluleke.